Good morning, Grace Point, and happy Father's Day. We're so excited you decided to worship with us this morning. If you are new here, welcome. We do have coffee and muffins out in the lobby this morning, and our restrooms are located right outside these doors. If you've been going to Grace Point for a while and you're curious on how to give, there's a couple of different ways. You can go to our website and click on the Giving tab. Download our Grace Point app where you can keep up with everything that's going on. You can also click Giving there. Or as always, you can drop your gift in the joy box in the back. Awesome. Next Sunday, we've got a lot going on. In between first and second service, back in the village, we've got Jump Up Sunday. That's where our kids will be meeting their new teachers. So please, we're encouraging you to join us for that. Also, right after second service, we're going to have a reception to honor Blake next Sunday. So make plans to join us for that. And then save the date, August 27th, we're going to have our Married People Live event. It's the ultimate date night. It's going to be at the Atrium Event Center. So if you got any questions about that, you can see me. I want to give a huge shout out to Team Orange. If you look around, we've got some volunteers in Orange. We had Summer Jazz Camp this week. These guys rocked it this week for our kids, just loving on them and having a great time. So let's give them a big round of applause for all that they did. Awesome. Thank you. We'll continue worship.
If you guys will stand and join us. Lost at the fall, running away when I heard you call. Father, you heard your word. I had no righteousness of my own. I had no right to draw near your throne. Father, you love me still. You did love before you laid the world's foundation. You predestined to adopt me as your own. You have raised me up so high above my station. I'm a child of God by grace and grace alone. The lost, you knew the great and terrible cost, but Jesus, your face was set. I worked my fingers down to the bone, but nothing I did could ever atone. But Jesus, you paid my debt. By your blood I have redemption and salvation. Lord, you died that I might reap what you have sown, and you rose that I might be a new creation. I am born again by grace and grace alone. I was in darkness all of my life. I never knew the day from the night. But Spirit, you made me see. I swore I knew the way on my own, that for us an heart made of stone. The Spirit, you moved in me. At your touch my sleeping spirit was awakened. Oh, my darkened heart the light of Christ has shone. Called into a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Heaven citizens by grace and grace alone. So I'll stand in faith by grace and grace alone. I will run the race by grace and grace alone. I will slay my sin by grace and grace alone. I will for me. His love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath weight of his winds and mercy. All of a sudden, I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us. Oh. Y'all try this again with me. He's jealous for me. His love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of his winds and mercy. All of a sudden, I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us. Oh, oh, how he loves us. How he loves us. Oh. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. So we are his portion. He is our prize, drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. And if his grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. So heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. And I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. You guys can be seated.
Good morning. Let's see. We're good? Am I good? All right. Good morning. Happy Father's Day. Is your dad in here? Happy Father's Day. So we want to make sure we celebrate you. Moms get a little more love. And we did not put Father's Day cards in the women's bathroom because we know you'll remember. And so we didn't do that. Also, want to tell you, coming up, starting this Wednesday, we are starting a marriage series on Wednesday night. And so if you're looking to be married or you want to be married one day, and if you are married now, if you are long in your marriage, you still want to come, we're going to work through 8 weeks of the Song of Solomon. So I haven't done that actually when I was looking back at my notes since 2009. And back in 2009, we did Song of Solomon. Actually was the most listened to, I don't know if we called it podcast then, but downloads that we had. So you don't want to miss that. Also, we are celebrating at the end of the service today our Summer Jives. We had an incredible week. How many, if you're in an orange shirt, stand up if you worked at Summer Jives, or you had something to do with Summer Jives. These people are incredible servants. Next service, yeah, give them a hand. You guys can sit down. The next service, there'll be a lot more people here, and there'll be a lot of orange shirts. And so you guys are the early risers, and so the rest of them will be here next service. But incredible week, 215 or so kids. I don't even know the number of salvations we had with some kids. So incredible week. So we celebrate that. Just a lot going on here at Grace Point. We're thankful for it. So with all that said, let's dive into our Raising Cain series. We're on part 6. If you haven't been here, you can go catch up. With the first week, we talked about Mother's Day, the best advice that you could ever be given, which pretty much was what Mary told the servants when it came to Jesus. Whatever he tells you to do that. So that's basically a great way to live. And then we talked about the fact that we are inadequate as parents, and then we have talked through Deuteronomy 6, which is the longest passage in the scriptures about parenting. So we're not going to cover everything with parenting, but we'll cover a lot. We talked about God has to be your God, and then we talked about that you got to love God with everything. Then we talked about having our focus on relationships over rules, and then we've been growing in that. And so today we're going to pick up Deuteronomy 6:7. We're not read it yet, but the reason we are diving into this is that life is PG. And that means if you've been to the movies, parental guidance, and typically parental guidance is suggested. But when Moses wrote this, it was not suggested, it was commanded. Parental guidance is something that every child needs. They should not be left on their own to figure out things. And he commanded that for them because they were going into a brand new land. They're going to meet other people from other tribes, and those people are going to have other gods and other faiths and other ideologies. And so he wanted them to be understanding who their God was, because every generation needs parental guidance. God has put kids with parents on purpose. And so kids are not meant to be left alone to figure it out. Our culture right now, you have too many kids really dictating to their parents what they are to believe, what they are to do, who they are, what their identity is. And the reality is the scripture never lays that out. It's always the parents who are to give guidance to their kid. And so what we start with is divine guidance. I have divine guidance, so that would be living life DG, not PG, divine guidance. And divine guidance allows you to give parental guidance to your kids. As I said, it's not suggested, it's commanded. It is something that your kids need. Your kids have never been meant by God to figure it out on their own. That's why we've talked about when you are teaching your kids, you teach them this is who God is, this is who we are as a family, and this is who you are. And that's important. That's what Deuteronomy 6 is all about. And so if we can understand that, that will help us. Today, we're going to build on what we've been talking about over the last few weeks. As you know, we will take a look at a verse in Deuteronomy, and then we'll look at further down in the chapter, there's an explanation of that verse. And so Deuteronomy 6:7 is our verse today. So let's take a look at it, and then I want to help us to understand what this teaching is, and I'll give you some illustrations from our own life. And it's always dangerous for me to give illustrations from my family because I'm pretty transparent and will tell you everything that's going on in our family's life, but they don't always love their life being displayed through my talks. So I have to choose wisely what I share with you, but I'll try to give you some practical things that we've experienced now that my 3 sons are basically grown men. So this is what Moses writes them at the time where they're on the precipice of going into the promised land. He says these words, "You shall teach them diligently to your children," that's the commands of the Lord, "and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." Pretty simple passage. 2 things really should stand out to us. If you have your Bible, you might want to circle these 2 things in your scripture. This is what it says. "You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you should talk of them when you sit in your house," blah, blah, blah. So there's 2 things that you are to do as a parent. Number 1 is your responsibility to teach your kids. It's not the church's responsibility, and it's not the school's responsibility. It's not the government's responsibility. That responsibility starts with you. So you are to teach your kids. And particularly what the focus is here is this is a formal teaching. This is a discipline that you give them. It's instructional. So that means with your kids that you should have some time where you're instructing your kids in the ways of God and the character of God and teaching them about who God is. That's not to be left to anyone else. Now, let me say this. The reason we're wearing orange when it comes to our kids is because red and yellow make orange. That means that there's a partnership between the church and you as a parent. We are to come alongside of you and help you. And so you have 2 colors blended together and you get orange, and that makes a difference in a kid's life. And so the reason we say that is because we're here to partner with you, not to take your job. And so there are obviously some families where we need to step in and do more of that. But at the end of the day, you as a parent are responsible to teach your kids. And here's the second thing that you see. So he says, "You shall teach them," and then he says, "and you should talk to them." So that's the informal way of discipling your kids, is that you should have some formal times, you should have some informal times. You need to have instructional times, and you need to have interactional times, conversational times. So you got the times that I'm teaching my kids, it's a little bit more formal, and then you got the time that you are interacting with them on the things of God. And I'll say this as a parent, because as I told you, as a pastor, I didn't want my kids to become the pastor's kids. We all know what that means, right? The preacher's kids. So I didn't want them to be that way. So I probably spend a little less time on instructional time and more time on interactional time. And one of the reasons that I think interactional time conversational time is so important is because when I look back on the history of how I've learned about God, how I have been discipled, I discovered that most of my discipleship throughout the years has been through having conversations with people. And so that's what I think the passage is teaching. So you would have these teaching times, but you would have these talking times. You will always have more informal times than you will formal times. Not unless you're really strict at your home and you're going to sit down and you have a class, which, by the way, the Watsons never did. Well, I've never set the boys down and instructed them like I do, like I'm preaching here. That never happens in our home because I think that was kind of weird. And so I know my parents did that with me a few times, and I was like, I didn't really like it and didn't really appreciate it. And so I'm not saying sit your kids down like it's a classroom in your house, but there are instructional times in our house. Sometimes that can happen in a formative manner or a corrective manner, and so you will have those types of talks. But how we mostly did it was through conversations. And I will offer to you this, that if you look at the Gospels, that Jesus himself had more conversations with his disciples than he had instructional times. There's the Sermon on the Mount. There's the night that Jesus was betrayed and they had the Last Supper, where he definitely did instruction. But the bulk of the time that Jesus spent discipling his guys was spent where? On the road, around a table, hanging out together. And so a lot of our discipleship in general comes through interaction with people, just rubbing hard against them, being with them. And then there are times where you have more formal times. So what does Moses mean? He means the time that you spend with your kids needs to be both instructional and interactional. Don't leave that to anyone else. It's your responsibility to pass on and transfer the truth to your kids. And you will do it in everyday conversations as well as the times where you talk to them in a more instructional manner. Now, what this implies, as you read it closely, is that there will be time that you have to spend with your kids. And so I want to talk to you about time because the rest of the passage is about the time that you spend with your kids. So you have that component with teach. You have the component of talk to your kids. And then it says, as you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise. And so that means that you're going to do what? That you're going to spend time with your kids. There is no substitute for that. And there's no substitute for a quantity of quality times. So someone has said before, you need to spend quality time with your kids, but you also have to have quantity times. It's both and. It's not either or. And so you've got to spend time with your kids. And so that's what we're going to spend the bulk of our time today talking about, is spending time with our kids. Paul writes to us in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 and 16, these words about our time. And so I want to read them to you because I think it's important. He says this, "Look carefully then how you walk," which is a reference to how you live. How do you live every day? I want you to examine it and look carefully at it. And he says, not as unwise, but as wise. A wise person will examine how they live. They're not just going through life. So he says, look carefully at it and how you're living every day and be wise, making the best use of our times because the days are evil. Growing up, that was translated redeeming the time. Making the most of your time is all about redeeming your time. So the issue is for us as parents and in general as anybody who follows Jesus, how am I using my time? How do you do with time management? It's really not managing time, is it, if you think about it, because you get what? You get 24 hours every day. Every day is 24 hours. It never changes. So you're not really managing time. What are you managing? You're managing what you do during the time that you have. And everybody has a limited amount of time. And so because of that, every day you got 24 hours. So what do you do in your 24 hours? So you're managing what you do in your time. And so what Paul is saying to us is we need to make the most of our time. And the question is, are we making the most of our time as parents with our children? Because guess what? Our children are going to be born, and about 18 years later, they're going to graduate from high school, and then they're going to fly off into the world. They're going to leave the nest. For most of us. Some of us might have them a lot longer, but they're going to leave eventually. So when you have a limited amount of time, what do you do in that time that you have allotted with your kids? And what Paul says is you need to make the most of that time because we live in evil days, and so you need to pay attention to the time. Time with your children is essential, not optional. If you're going to transfer the truth of God, it implies that you are going to do it heart to heart, conversation by conversation, that there will be time spent with our kids. Do your kids have enough stuff? Probably so. They probably got most of the things they need, I would think. And even a lot of the things they want. But here's another question. Do they have your time? Do they get time with you? It's important that you spend time with your kids. Material possessions will never mean as much as your physical presence and undivided attention. They need time with you. And the only way that you can impact them truly in a positive manner for the Lord is to spend time with them. Spend time with them. When I was doing youth ministry for 15 years, and I still say this now when I'm counseling the parents, your kids need and want your attention. And if you don't give it to them, they will get it from you eventually. And I use this phrase with parents all the time. Bad attention is better than no attention. In other words, when your kids are acting up, they are acting up to get your attention because they want your attention, and if they can't get it in a positive manner, if they can't get good attention, then they will get your attention by getting bad attention from you, by getting you to notice them, because they're not going to live with no attention. You have to give them attention. They want it. I know some of us might have teenagers say, our kids don't want to spend time with us. Well, this starts when they're young. But even your teenager wants to spend time with you if you have a relationship. That's why we talked about it. If we have a relationship that is more important than the rules, then we will build that relationship, and our kids will want to spend time with us. They don't mind being with us. But if it's always about the rules, guess what? They ain't going to spend time with you. But if it's about the relationship, it matters. Had a parent, and I've had several parents come to me and say, you know, my kid's acting up, and they just keep doing this over and over and over, especially between the ages of 2 and 7. You know, my advice to them, I said, well, why don't you stop what you're doing and why don't you just go play with them? Well, I don't really want to do that. Well, why don't let's just do an experiment. This week, your kid's acting up. Why don't you just sit down and play with them? And I'll tell you this, every time they'll come back and say, man, it just really changed things. Because they wanted attention. It's time spent with your kids. It's quantity of quality times that you spend with your kids. You and I must do that as parents. And as the older they get, you keep doing that. But when your kid is 2 to 7 years old, especially smaller kids, you know, you might not spend as long quantity time with them, but what they like is short bursts of time. Anybody with a small kid ever notice this? They'll spend some time with you, and then they're off to do their own thing, and then they come back. I remember I was playing with some kids at church. They weren't my kids at the time. Well, they're not my kids now either. But they were at the church, and there was this young kid, a little boy, and he would come and spend some time with me playing, and then he'd go off. And so I wasn't paying attention. He came back, and he punched me in the eye. And, you know, he got my attention because bad attention is better than no attention. I wasn't paying him attention. But really what he wanted was short bursts of time. And that's what your kids want. And so you have to pay attention to the time that you spend with them. Significant moments happen at unpredictable times. You can't always predict what's going to happen in the moment. But if you don't have moments with them, then I can assure you, you're not going to have significant moments. Moments mean that you are spending time with them. So you need to be prepared when the moments come. And be prepared to talk to them about the Lord. You know, significant moments in a kid's life happen through a trusted relationship with their parents. That's how they happen. You know, when you think about significant moments, those are the times when there are life-changing, transformational moments. I was saved April 9th, 1978. I know that because my parents wrote it in my Bible. I remember the day, I remember the moment where I realized that Jesus died for me all those years ago. I don't remember a lot about my childhood, but that was a significant moment in my life. And I was talking to my parents about this one day, and I was talking about remembering that moment. And my mom said to me, well, we had been talking to you about the gospel for quite some time. Do you know, I don't remember any of those conversations. But why that's significant is because it was a trusted relationship over time, over conversations that made an impact on my life. I just don't remember them all. And your kids may not remember all the times that you spend with them. They may not remember all the conversations you with them. Do you remember all the conversations with your parents and all the moments? Of course you don't. But there are significant moments that happen because you have a trusted relationship. And that can only happen if you spend time with them. If you look down, these are the verses that go with this verse. Verses 20 through 25. Significant moment. You never know when it's going to happen. Listen to what Moses tells them. When your son asks you in what? In time to come. That means that time might not be right here, right now. But in time to come, your son's going to stop you and ask you a question. Basically, why do we do all this stuff? And the issue is, are you going to be prepared for that moment? Significant moments don't happen when you want them to. They happen when they happen. When your son comes to you and he asks you a spiritual question, when your son asks you in time to come, and that's important. And he says, what is the meaning of the testimonies and statutes and the rules that the Lord our God has commanded you? You don't create that moment. That moment happens in time. And Moses says, you have to understand that. It's a significant moment. It says, in time to come. And so, then you shall say to your son, you know what he's saying? Be prepared for that moment. Are you prepared as a spiritual leader in your home for that moment? When your son asks, when your daughter asks, why are we doing all this stuff? Why do we believe Jesus? Who is God? When they come, you shall say to them, go ask your mother. No. That's not what he says. And dads, that's important for us. Didn't say that. A lot of times that's happening in our culture. And he says, this is what you're to say. When we were Pharaoh's slaves, the Lord showed signs and wonders and great and grievous against Egypt and against Pharaoh and against his household before our eyes. And he brought us out from there, that he might bring us in and give us the land that he swore to give our fathers. And the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God, for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as we are to this day. And it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to do all this commandment before the Lord our God and as he has commanded us. And so he says, be prepared to answer your kids. Why do we do what we do? Do you know in whom you believe and why you follow him and what it looks like? It is your responsibility to tell them. He didn't say, when they come to you, go ask your mother. He didn't say, send them to the tabernacle so that Moses could teach them or Aaron the priest could teach them. He says, you answer them and you tell them what God has done for you. That's what you do. You tell them how God has saved you, what he's done in your life. And some of us miss those moments because we're too busy. I wrote in my Bible as a teenager because I heard somebody say, the speaker say it, if Satan can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. And some of us are missing the moments because we're too busy. And if you're too busy to spend time with your kids, you're too busy. Slow down. Busyness can be a big problem in your life. You don't get to do the parenting thing again. I mean, you might have multiple children, but that one child, you, or that second child, the third child, how many of you are going to have, you don't get to do over with them. It's one time through. So make the most of those moments. In parenting, that's what you got to be focused on. What are the moments? There are three types of moments, I think, that exist. The first one is spontaneous moments. The moments that you don't plan. The moments that just happen. The moments when your son comes to you and asks, what's the meaning of all this? Why do we go to church and worship when nobody else does? Why do we follow Jesus? Those moments, you don't get to predict them. You don't get to control them. They just happen. And they tend to happen in those difficult and disappointing seasons sometimes. When things are hard. That's a lot of times when kids will come to you. And sometimes we work so hard as parents to make our kids' life so smooth. Any helicopter parents? We want to make our kids' life so smooth, and we want to fix every problem that comes their way. And I get that. We're wired to protect them. But some of us are overprotecting them. Some of us are underprotecting them. But you need to see the tension there, because your kids are going to learn through the difficulties and disappointments of their life. And if you shelter them from everything, guess what's going to happen? When they leave you one day, guess what's going to happen? They're going to face difficulty and they're going to face disappointments. Do they know how to handle it? You're there to walk through it with them, not to solve every problem. So if they go to school and they don't like their teacher, don't always rescue them from the teacher. If they're in a sports team and they have to sit the bench, don't always rescue them. They have to go through those moments. You went through those moments, and God uses those moments of difficulty and disappointment. They're spontaneous and they're difficult to go through. I remember when Connor was 8 years old, and we'd been playing baseball, and it was all-star selection. And most of his buddies got chosen for the all-star team, but he didn't. And he was upset about it. And we had a talk. It was a moment, teachable moment. That was instructional time. And as we sat in the bedroom and I talked with Connor, I said, well, how are you going to do this? How are you going to deal with this? He said, I'm going to work so that next year I'll make the all-star team. You know what? That's what he did. I didn't go down to the rec department to try to solve the problem. I tried to help him work through it. And you know what? It ended up being a really good thing, because when he got to his junior year in high school playing baseball for Coffee High here, he had a split in his a ligament in his wrist. And he missed 6 months rehabbing after surgery. Didn't even get to play his junior year. You know what I found out about my son is my son at 8 years old was learning to be resilient. And then when he got into high school, he learned to be resilient. And you can't always control those moments, and you can't protect them from it. But those are the moments God uses. Also, they're scheduled moments. So you have those spontaneous moments and you have scheduled moments. What are the scheduled moments? If you look at the text, it says, hey, when you sit at your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise, there are 4 moments right there that Moses says to the people. There are 4 moments that are scheduled. So we would say there's drive time, because nobody in here really walking anywhere, right? I mean, for the most part. I mean, some of you might walk, to work or walk to the store, but I don't think anybody walked to Grace Point today, right? We drove to Grace Point. So there's drive time, and then there's downtime when you sit at your home, and then there's wake time, and then there's sleep time. And those are scheduled moments every day in your life. Those are the moments that you travel to and from somewhere. Those are the moments where you're sitting at your house, which may be meals, it may be playtime. And then there's the time when they get up, and then there's sleep time. Now, I got to tell you, the Watsons weren't big on the wake time, moments, because we're all like nighttime people. So most of our moments were taking place at sleep time, because most of us were just trying to get our eyes open. But I will say to you that drive time was huge in parenting for me, because I was the one dropping the kids off at school. And so there were thousands of conversations that we had about God and about life in the car. And then at sleep time, going in their room before they went to bed and sitting with them and talking about these things. We schedule kids for academics and athletics, but do we schedule them for their spiritual life? Do we think about their day in terms of how can I impact them in a spiritual sense? That's what Moses is saying. He's saying these are the times that you need to leverage for the good of your kids so that they know God. I want to give you a couple of, so this will sound really weird, but we had a time where I was talking with Cameron about studying the Bible, and I actually wrote down how the conversation went. So I want to share you the conversation, so you kind of know like what this sounds like, at least for us, and maybe it'll spur something in you to think about your scheduled times. So drive time was always big for us. That's the walk time. That's the travel time. Those were great moments for me because I would have them, they had me in the car. It was undivided attention. So on the way to baseball practice one day, I said to Cameron, how's your relationship with God? He said, okay. And I said, you've been spending time with him? And he said, I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, because God's invisible, right? I said, one of the ways you spend time with God is reading his word so that you can get to know him. So I said, have you been reading his word? And he said, not really. And I said, do you think it's important? Yes. I said, you spend a lot of time playing Xbox. If somebody were watching you every day to see what's important to you, what would you think that they would think is most important to you? Xbox or God? He said, Xbox. And I said, what do you think you should do? He said, I should read my Bible. I said, you going to do that? I didn't get rules there. Catch that. That was not a rule for me. I said, you going to do that? And he said, I'm going to try to read through my Bible then. And he said, I'll start with Genesis. That's what we all do when we're going to read through the Bible, right? Because it's the first book, it's the book of beginnings. Great place to start. So we went to practice. Later that night, we got home. It's sleep time. So I was going into their bedroom because Cameron and Connor were sharing a room. Caleb had his own room. It's good to be the firstborn. So I went into his room to get some clothes out for Connor's baseball stuff. Connor was lying in his bed, and Cameron was sitting in the closet reading Genesis chapter 1. You know, Jesus told us when you want to spend time with God, go get in the closet. So he did. And actually, he enlisted Connor in on this, I guess for accountability's sake, that they would read it together. And so on the way to practice, drive time the next day, here's the conversation. I said, how's the Bible reading going? And he said to me, we have read through Genesis 2. I was pretty impressed. I said, what do you learn? And he goes, I don't know. And I said, well, what was it about? And he said, God creating Adam and Eve and the world. And I said to him, what did he tell them to do? And he said he told them to rule over the earth. And I said, he wants them to work, right? He said, yep. I said, is work good or bad? He said, good. I said, right. I said, we're given jobs to work. We were given jobs to work before Adam and Eve messed up. I said, when you get to Genesis 3, it's about how we messed up and work became painful. And he said, they really messed it up for us. And I said, yeah, but we would have done the same. And then I said to him, and these are the teachable moments. It shows you how your choices can make a big difference, doesn't it? And he said, yeah. You know, I don't think he probably remembers that conversation. I don't think I would have remembered that conversation had I not written it down. But you never know what can happen in your downtime, in your drive time, in your wake time, or in your sleep time. But you got a plan to be there. That's the point. And the third kind of moments that you have are special moments. That means that these moments that you schedule because they're a little bigger than other moments. And that you have to think through as a parent, what are the moments that I want to really have an impact on their life? Well, I'm not waiting for them to come to me. I'm going to go to them, and I'm going to fix it so that they have a moment. So The advantage of being a youth pastor for years before you ever have kids is you get to think through things that you might not normally think through. You get to meet people and see people and say, you're like, I really like that idea, and I'll grab that, and I'll grab this. And so that's what I did. And some of the ideas were just from me. One of the things that I wanted to create a special moment in the boys' life was, so when they were born, right as they that first day or so, I wrote them a letter, handwritten letter, and I put it in an envelope, and they didn't get it until they were 16 years old. It had been sealed. Nobody ever read it until they opened it when they became 16 years old. Matter of fact, I didn't even really remember what I wrote. But as a dad, I wrote to all three of the boys, and I gave it to them because when they got 16, there was something I wanted them to know as their dad about their birth and how much they meant to me and how good God had been. And so it created a special moment. Another moment that I had, and you don't have to take my moments. You can create your own moments. Be creative. You're smart people. Everybody in the room is probably smarter than I am anyway. But I wanted to create special moments. So we had another moment for their life. When they got to be 13 years old, we created moments where where it was like becoming a man ceremony. It was like a bar mitzvah almost. And so what I wanted to do for them is create this moment where they got 13, because here was what's important to me. In the scriptures and for most of history, there is no such thing as a teenager. There is no such thing as adolescence. You were a boy and you became a man. And so, at the Watson's home, we didn't look at this. You have teenage years, even though I was a youth pastor. I didn't look at it that way. I was looking at it like, okay, I'm going to treat you like a man when you become 13 years old. And I expect you to live up to that. That's the standard. Like, don't be a boy anymore, be a man. So what I did is we had a ceremony for all three boys. And in that ceremony, I had three men, because we were all here at Grace Point, come and speak to them and give them a charge. We had a meal together in their honor. We also had just, friends and family over for that. And the other thing is each of the boys got a sword. This is a Roman gladius. This is Connor's. He's on vacation right now. It's in his room. They probably don't carry these around anyway. Maybe they need to these days. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to come up with something for them, because I want them to be tender warriors. I want them to be men. And so what I did is I found Roman gladiuses, and they all look a little different. And then I have engraved on it Micah 6:8, do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And so I would present them with a sword, just as a special moment in their life to remind them of who they are and remind them to be men. And so some of the people that have been involved in that said, what would you do if you have a daughter? Since I didn't have a daughter, what would you have done? Because they were like, I really like what you've done here, and they wanted to replicate it with their daughter. And I said, I think, because I thought about this, Trish and I wanted a daughter, but God didn't see that we needed a daughter. I said, I think I would probably have given them a tiara or a ring of some sort. I said, I'm not sure, since I didn't have to make that decision, but I would have done something similar to for my daughter. And I'll even say this to fathers. The best protection for your daughter is you. And I don't mean that you're going to beat up everybody in their life. I mean, girls learn appropriate affection from their father, and if they get it from their father, which affection is going to come through having attention with their father, then they don't have to go seek it from other men and other guys in their life. But all that happens when you create special moments. And there are other moments like that at the Watson's house, like Christmas Eve night. Trish makes a lot of finger foods. We read the Christmas story, and we watch a movie. I think the historical movie for us now is Elf. And that's what we do Christmas Eve, typically. Now, when they were really little, we would also get in their pajamas and go look at lights. But, when they got to be teenagers, that was kind of weird. So we quit doing that. But we had those moments where we were together. And then on Christmas Day, Trish would make a big dinner. Obviously, we celebrate that morning. She'd make a big dinner, and then that night we have a birthday cake for Jesus. This is really simple stuff. Creating special moments to talk about God and about the things that we value. One of the things that I would try to do every year, I didn't do it as well as I hoped, because I don't want you to think, hey, I was a perfect parent or anything like that. I did try to think through some things. There's some other things I could share with you, but for time's sake, I'm not. But one of the things that I wanted to do was have a trip with each of my sons every year. We didn't get it every year. Matter of fact, we missed some years. I had planned this trip to Providence Canyon with Cameron. It took me about 3 or 4 years to get to it, because we just couldn't ever find a good time to go. But I had promised him that before he graduated from high school, he and I would go hike that Providence Canyon. And then I think it was the summer before his senior year, and I was like, I got to get this done because I promised him I would do that, and I'm going to keep my word. And so he and I went and sweated. I think it was during the fall of that year, walking Providence Canyon. It was a great moment for us. And what I want to encourage you to do, are you creating special moments with your kids? You're going to have spontaneous moments. You need to have scheduled moments in everyday life, but you need to have special moments with your kids, because your kids need your time. Instruction and interaction about the things of God cannot happen unless you are present with them. And it's never too late. Because some of us will be in the room and some of us are listening online and we're saying, well, you know, my kid's this age or my kid's that age. It's never too late to start. Never too late. So the question we want to end today with is, you know, how am I investing into my kid's life? No one will make a greater impact on your kids than you will. It'll either be for good or not so good. So I want you to think about, how do I spend my time, and make my kids a priority in the time that God has allowed me to have with them. What did Paul say? Paul said, look carefully at how you walk. Don't be unwise, but be wise. Making the most of every opportunity. Making the most of your time, because the days are evil. What do you need to change in your parenting so that your kids get more of you in your attention? And I promise you it'll make a difference. That's why Moses told them before they went to the land, spend time with your kids. Talk to them about God. Be ready for the moment. So then you'll have these spontaneous moments, these scheduled moments, and these special moments. And it will make a difference in their life. It'll make a difference in all of eternity. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your grace and mercy. We all would come to this place today and say, when it comes to our time, we've been unwise. But there's grace for that. But moving forward, the time that I have, we want to make this commitment. I'm going to use my time wisely. I'm going to choose to do the things that will help make the most of the time that I have allotted in my life and the time that I have allotted with my kids. Encourage our hearts today that it's not too late. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Hey, we got a couple of videos for you. We got a Father's Day video and a Summer Jazz video. So hang on tight. After the videos, you are dismissed.
If your dad was a superhero, who would he be?
Superman,
How come?
because he's strong in himself and train.
What's your favorite thing about your dad? You like to play outside with your dad?
In the pool.
Cool.
I loved you, Daddy.
What's the funniest thing your dad ever did?
When we were riding on this bike thing and my daddy fell off of it.
If your dad was a superhero, what superhero would he be?
I think he would be like Superman or Spider-Man.
What's your favorite thing you like to do with your dad?
One, two, three. Hello, Daddy. Hello, Daddy. We love you, Daddy. I play soccer.
If your dad was a superhero, who would he be?
Superman,
Why?
because he's really strong.
Let me see your muscles. How big are his muscles?
That
Whoa! What's the favorite thing you like to do with your dad?
I like to go fishing, and I like to help him work.
If your dad was a superhero, who would he be like?
Batman.
Batman, how come?
He has black hair.
What's your favorite thing you like to do with your dad?
I like to go hunting with him and fishing, and he's just really fun to go hunting with.
Church mother in a church hat clap. Man, that sugar gave her color purple coming back clap. When that whole week beat you up and stress you, but you hear that organ playing and remind you of your blessings. And on another note, she just hit another note. Chills down my spine, got me crying, make me overload. You don't know about it though. Old school church hymns, deacons get the humming, now the drummer finna burst in. Lordy, Lordy, Lord. Can you hear me now? Church close, sweater, you don't care, you just get it now. Testify how we made martyrs out of these fathers and rose up all of his daughters to glorify him with honor. Man, I swear Thomas Jones with her head did. Now it's flying everywhere, she don't care what her head did. She an egg, yeah, caught up in the egg, yeah. Probably why she clapping like Jesus just reappeared, yeah. Give me that God Almighty, that good old gospel, that old school doctrine. Give me that truth for the body, ain't nothing new about it, but it's still warm. Church clap, let me hear the church clap. 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 I wanna be the type of dude to get the Lord on his feet. I wanna do the type of shows that the Lord wanna see. What I mean, if I can make the whole church clap, it ain't a clap in the heavens, then that clap just a clap, clap. Holy Son glorified, sin mortified. The Holy Spirit going word that truth ain't watered down. It sound doctrine, gets birthed in the common now. Nothing wrong with singing loud, but that ain't where the power's found. The church has been clapping at weak sermons, leaving the weak hurt. No one's changed by Sunday service. We need discernment, check what you be affirming, cause the church can be full of members but empty in conversions. Preach the gospel and stand back, look for change.